Australians are being gaslighted. Both major political parties would have us believe they're genuinely interested in improving housing affordability. But the reality is, they'll do everything in their power to ensure house prices keep rising. I'm Biko Konstantinos, and that's what we're going to talk about today. What do you call a spider with 13 eyes? A spider. And just like a spider, if you'd love to get trapped in a web of independent analysis and commentary, you've come to the right place, baby. So hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, because together we'll be an amazing team. I'll be your goose if you be my maverick.
Goodness gracious, great balls of fire!
Now recently, we've had the budget from the government and the budget response from the opposition, and both parties stated that improving the housing market was their key priority. So today I'm going to look at the policies that they're putting forward and consider if they genuinely want to fix this housing crisis or if they're just bloody gaslighting us. Now, I don't have any political leanings, so all my commentary is unbiased. I'm specifically focusing on the policies directly related to housing, and we'll first take a look at the current Labor government.
As the rental crisis deepens, a modest 10% boost to Commonwealth rent assistance, around $19 a fortnight for singles, $25 for families.
All I can say is that you wouldn't want to be on welfare and renting in Australia. Unless you're in social housing, the number of rentals affordable to welfare recipients would be basically zero now in nearly every Australian city. And not only welfare recipients, Australians on low-paying jobs are being absolutely smashed by this current rental crisis, with many spending up to 50% of their after-tax income just towards rent. And when you consider anything above 30% is considered to be in housing stress, millions of Australians are now struggling just to live.
It's part of a $6.2 billion housing package that also aims to get more homes off the ground.
In the 5 years from this July, we aim to build 1.2 million of them.
I don't know how the government can say we aim to build 1.2 million houses. They're basically hoping that the private building industry will build all these properties, but so far the targets are falling way short. Let's see what the Greens had to say about Labor's $6.2 billion investment into housing.
I tell you who wins in this so-called Labor's housing budget: property investors, who get $175 billion over the next 4 years, while there's no new ongoing funding for public housing, nothing for the millions of renters who don't receive Commonwealth rent assistance, and nothing for mortgage holders.
Recognising housing pressure from migration, universities will be forced to build more accommodation in order to accept more international students.
When it comes to immigration, Labor have said they want to halve the recent immigration levels as well as crack down on student visas. Now, halving might seem quite a lot, but they're basically coming from the highest levels, miles above anything ever seen before. So if you halve an immigration level of 650,000, you still end up with 325,000, which is massive for a comparatively small populated country like Australia. So Labor sounds like they want to reduce immigration, but to me it still sounds like it's going to be very high, especially compared to our long-term averages. Overall, Labor's throwing heaps of money into the housing sector in the hope that supply will drastically improve. However, with immigration levels remaining high, I see very little hope of any significant improvement in housing affordability. In fact, pumping billions of dollars in the economy is considered inflationary, and high inflation normally translates into fast rising house prices. Now let's consider what the opposition Liberal Party are offering up.
Now, it's wonderful that parents, in some circumstances with financial means, can help their kids into a home. But I will never accept a situation where the only people who can afford to buy a home in our country are those with the support of their parents.
This is an excellent point. House prices in Australia have risen so fast, so quick, that millions of Australians are completely locked out of the housing market, with many giving up all hope of ever being able to afford their own home. If we want to have a thriving society, we cannot relegate home ownership to only those families who already own property, because if if you do that, like what's happening right now, you end up with two classes, property owners and non-property owners, the wealthy and the peasants, or the landlords and the slaves. So I like Dutton's intention, but will his policies make any difference? Dutton has committed to reducing permanent migration to 140,000 for 2 years, which will then increase to 150,000 and 160,000 in year 3 and 4. Now for me, this still isn't low enough considering the disastrous state of the housing crisis, but it is a step in the right direction and it's considerably lower than what Labor have committed to.
We believe that by rebalancing the migration program and taking decisive action on the housing crisis, the Coalition can free up almost 40,000 additional homes in the first year and well over 100,000 homes in the first 5 years.
I've seen a number of articles recently saying that reducing immigration won't have any effect on the housing market. And when I read these, I'm absolutely flabbergasted. You heard right. Flabbergasted. It's the same bloody argument by saying we need more housing supply, because if you've got more housing supply, there'll be hopefully less overall demand for housing. But guess what? If you reduce immigration levels, you also have less demand for housing. And the best thing, it can be done almost immediately and not 5 or 10 years down the track with no actual guarantee that this housing supply they want will actually get built. So build your bloody houses, but cut immigration now so Australians can have a decent roof over their heads.
First, we will implement a 2-year ban on foreign investors and temporary residents purchasing existing homes in Australia.
How about we ban all foreign investment in Australian property? Our house prices are insane. Millions of Australians can't afford a home, so why allow wealthy foreigners to capitalise on our speculative housing? But any ban is better than none, so this is a step in the right direction in my opinion. Now there's one Liberal policy that I don't like at all, and that's allowing first home buyers to access their super to purchase a home. Now I want as many Australians as possible to be able to afford their own home, but accessing their super is the wrong way to go about it as far as I'm concerned. The goal should be to improve housing affordability so that as many Australians as possible can get into the market. By allowing the access of super, that will create extra demand for housing because more people will be able to bid on properties, and increased demand leads to higher house prices. And higher house prices inevitably means that more Australians are locked out of housing. So let's not increase housing demand further. Why can't Australians be able to afford their own home as well as having super for retirement? Is that too much to ask? So overall, Liberal policies seem like they will ease the housing crisis, but there's definitely not a complete overhaul to try and improve housing affordability. Then we've got the Greens, who've been the most vocal about improving housing affordability for Australians. One area in which they've been very vocal is to remove tax concessions for property investors.
Phase out the tax handouts for property investors, denying millions of renters the chance to buy a home.
Now I totally agree with this policy. By overhauling tax concessions for property investors, you'll reduce a lot of speculative demand for property in Australia. That will mean less investors bidding on existing homes, which means more first home buyers will be able to get a home for themselves. This speculative demand side for property is one area that Labor and Liberal are falling short. Now the Greens are the only party willing to tackle this speculative demand side for property. Labor Treasurer Jim Chalmers was recently questioned about this, and this was his response.
The buying power of working individuals, young families, single parents, and pensioners is being suffocated by that of wealthy property investors, incentivized by negative gearing and capital gains tax concessions. How can the Labor Party claim to represent the working class while maintaining policies that undermine their access to affordable housing?
The only thing that will simultaneously address the issues with renters and the issues with buyers is we need more homes. Only thing is to build much more housing.
Now I'm pretty sure that both the Labor and the Liberal Party know that property tax concessions do need to be overhauled to help remove some of the distortions in the housing market. I mean, Dutton said that he doesn't want families who own property to be the only ones who can continue owning property, but guess what? Policies like negative gearing and capital gains tax discount basically basically create a system where that's what eventuates. So the Greens also want to put in place rent freezes, and I'm in two minds about this policy. While I do want renters to be looked after and not abused, I'd rather see rent prices kept lower due to general market forces, and that means having a rental vacancy that's high enough, which provides more power for renters because they'll have plenty of choice, and this helps to keep rent prices subdued. And that's why I completely do not understand why the Greens support mass migration levels. By bringing in more people than we have housing for, that drastically reduces vacancy rates, allowing landlords to surge rent prices because people need a place to live and will pay whatever it takes to have some safe and secure shelter. So there you have it. No major party in Australia is offering a complete solution to improve housing affordability. How long will we keep getting gaslighted on housing? I'm Biko Konstantinos.